There's a growing number of visual novel games on the PS4, and Frisky Business is the newest one to enter the fray. But is this a business that's worth getting involved with, or is it just a frisky fiasco? Frisky Business is a pretty straightforward visual novel game where you'll have a few dialogue choices throughout the course of the game and a few different endings that you can get to, though most of the endings are just a variation of one another. The game is adult skewed, so you're able to get in relationships and get into bed with the various female characters that are in the game, and there's a few different ways you can go about this with who you end up choosing and your various choices throughout the course of the story. In it, you're playing as a private detective who is investigating this mysterious clown that is all of a sudden stalking outside of this house that contains 3 young women. You have an assistant named Charlie, as well as a police officer friend that will help you in the investigation. You can find some clues here and there that will lead you to a few different areas, but for the most part, the story ends up playing out pretty straightforward, with your only real choices being the girl that you end up being with. The game's writing has plenty of humor that it tries to sprinkle in, but at its best, it's very amateur, with a lot of the choices that you'll be able to select from being lackluster at best, where basically it amounts down to saying, hey, I want to sleep with you, and then the girl agrees or doesn't agree. There's not a whole lot of depth to the relationships that you get to build. There's a tiny bit thrown in when you get to go on a date with a particular girl, but this is so minor and small it really doesn't end up adding anything to the game's characters and story. One thing I appreciate as you're going through the text, you actually have to scroll through it using one button and then make your selections for your choices using a different button. So if you're kind of mashing the button and going through, especially if you're replaying the game to see how the different stories play out, this way you don't accidentally make a wrong choice as you have to use that different button. However, that's about the best thing I can say about the game. There's a few different misspellings throughout, including some words that were missing letters in certain sequences, so I had to kind of reread it a few times to understand what they were trying to say, as well as controls locked on me. I wasn't able to make any sort of choice whatsoever. I had menus kind of overlapping on top of one another and had to quit out of the game completely and come back in. Sound effects would just keep playing repeatedly even when they weren't necessary. For example, there's a few times where you're able to text in the game, and the texting sound effect would just keep playing as the game progressed, way after the texting scenario was over. Then there's the just lack of depth when it comes to the overall story and progression of the relationships. There's a lot of visual novel and dating sims where you have to really work at it in order to build up these relationships or get certain paths for endings. But basically this game just flat out tells you either, yes, you pick this one, you're gonna end up being with this girl, or if you pick this one, you're not. No really kind of gray area or multiple choices or really dialogue building between these different events in order to really feel like a reward for picking the right things. While the game throws in plenty of fan service like moments where you take the girls to the pool or you can actually spy on them in their rooms, there is actually no nudity included in the game. When you do finally get to make love to one of these girls, you basically just have a blank screen with a bunch of hearts that go across and nothing else ends up happening from this. Another critical flaw is there's no chapter select in the game or way to speed through the dialogue. A lot of visual novel games, once you've played through areas already, you can set an option so it'll speed through text that you've already seen so you can get right back to where you're trying to make new choices or see different potential storylines. The good thing is though, the game is extremely short. In fact, beating it with the best ending took me less than 52 minutes. The fact of playing as a private detective, you only get to do this one case, and there's really only one way for it to conclude, other than a few minor things at the very end of it. If this was just the first case of many that were included in the game, it would definitely have brought it up a bit. Frisky Business is available now on the PC and PS4 for $9.99. It does not have a full trophy list or a platinum. Being someone who does enjoy visual novel games, especially ones with a lot of choices, and ones that steer towards that more adult theme, I was hoping that Frisky Business would at least be somewhat entertaining. But unfortunately, it ends up being over so fast and ends up lacking any kind of depth that I just ended up really disliking the experience. With everything said though, I'm going to be giving Frisky Business a 3 out of 10. But anyway guys, it's going to wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course I hope you enjoy.